Okay, your problem is speaking English. First of all, you need to understand this. Watching TV shows, watching YouTube videos, or reading books will not help you to become fluent in English. Basically, doing only comprehensible input will not help you to become fluent in English. If you truly and really want to become fluent in your target language, you need to make sure that you're using this language. You're speaking, you're doing comprehensible output. Comprehensible output is the only way to speak the language. Now, let me tell you this, guys. My dad is an Armenian. My mom is half Polish, half Greek, and half Italian. And I am Italian citizen, okay? And I speak Turkish. Turkish is my native language. I was born in Turkey and I grew up in Turkey. I need you to keep this in mind. The only language that I speak is Turkish. Okay? There's this theory that when you're a kid, you learn the language by doing input. And that is not true, at least in my experience. Because when I was a kid, my mom didn't want me to speak Turkish. Because obviously I was gonna learn Turkish by going to school, right? Or by making Turkish friends. So basically, my dad used to speak Armenian, with his mom. My mom and my grandpa used to speak Greek and French. Also, my grandparents were always speaking Greek and French because it was the common languages. Even though I'm not a religious person, when I was growing up, my mom and my family used to take us to the church and every Sunday. So basically the service was always in Italian or French. And people were speaking either French or Italian. And the thing is, based on your theory, you only learn the language by doing input. I was exposed to French, I was exposed to Greek, I was exposed to Armenian. And here we are. The only language that I speak is Turkish. So another fun fact here, you always say that kids learn the language by doing input, right? My mom didn't speak Turkish to me, didn't speak Turkish with me up until I was 5 years old. When finally started my education, when finally started going to school, elementary school, my mom decided to speak Turkish to me. So basically, my mom didn't speak Turkish with me for 5 years, which are the most formative years as a child. My grandparents, when they came over to our house, they didn't only speak Turkish. My dad didn't only speak Turkish, they used to speak Armenian, Greek, French. So basically, Turkish was not the only language that I was hearing. Actually, I was hearing Greek, French, Armenian as much as I was hearing Turkish. And yet, when I started my education, when I went to the public school, when I started my elementary school, I was speaking Turkish as my first language, as good as like the other Turkish kids did. And I never struggled with speaking Turkish. And sometimes I ask myself, why did I choose to speak Turkish? That's the question that I ask myself, because my mom was not speaking Turkish with me, for instance, and anytime she spoke in another language, I always answered her in Turkish. I answered everyone in Turkish. I used Turkish, guys, because as a child, obviously, you don't want to learn many languages. You want to just do the easiest. And for me, I knew that everyone knew Turkish. No matter what language they spoke, I knew that when I spoke Turkish, they were going to understand me. So this is why I spoke Turkish, actually. Probably that's the reason. Because that was the easiest way. Because I didn't want to answer everyone in different languages. So basically, guys, Turkish became my first language because I used Turkish. I spoke Turkish. And here's the thing, guys. Today, I only speak Turkish. I'm not able to speak Greek. I'm not able to even make a few sentences in a row in Greek. I'm not able to speak any of those languages because I was only doing input. I was only exposed to the language, but I never used the language. I never wanted to use the language. I never wanted to speak the language. When you have no purpose of speaking a language or using a language, then you end up not being able to become fluent in English or in your target language. Another biggest problem, learning 1,000 common words, learning 3,000 words, will make you speak the language fluently. We start to speak the language by learning 3,000 words. That is completely and utterly wrong. I want to tell you guys something. My dad is an Armenian, and my dad used to speak Armenian with my grandma obviously they used to speak Armenian all the time, all the time. And at the age of 20, I decided to work in a publishing house that was Armenian publishing house, and everyone who worked in this publishing house, they were speaking Armenian. They knew Turkish, but they obviously were speaking Armenian because, you know, they're Armenian. And every time they were speaking Armenian, I was understanding what they were saying, but I wasn't able to speak in Armenian. And then I was like, wow, that is so embarrassing because they are speaking Armenian, I'm not able to answer them in Armenian, so what am I gonna do? So I got this book, you know, Armenian book, where you can learn Armenian by practicing yourself. And there is this very massive dictionary in this Armenian book, okay? And what I did was, at the time, I learned probably over 2,000 Armenian words. Guys, let me tell you this. I learned over 2,000 Armenian words with this book from the dictionary. And also, not to mention that, I know every single daily expressions in Armenian. I can easily understand the daily talk in Armenian. And on top of that, I learned 2,000 Armenian words. And on top of that, my dad used to speak Armenian with his mom all the time. And on top of that, every summer, my grandma used to come over to our house and he used to stay with us for like 2 months and used to constantly speak Armenian. And also, she tried to teach us Armenian. And also, I learned, I was exposed to Armenian in the publishing house. I did hours of input in Armenian in the publishing house every single day, every single work day. Basically, if you think about it, I've had a lot of input in Armenian. But why am I not able to speak the Armenian? Because I'm not using Armenian. Because I'm not using a language. Because I never tried to speak Armenian, even though I know thousands of words in Armenian. So basically, input never works. Input never works you to speak a language. If you ever come across anyone who says, like, learn 1,000 words, learn 3,000 words, or learn 5,000 words, learn the most common 3,000 words, and then listen to the language a lot, watch videos a lot, because when you understand, you will start to speak the language. That is not true, at least for me. I can understand Armenian, I know thousands of words in Armenian, but I'm not able to speak Armenian. In order to speak the language fluently, you need to have an intention, you need to have a goal to speak a language, use a language. I never had a goal to speak another language other than Turkish. For those of you who might doubt if I speak Turkish, Türkçe ana dilim. Rahat bir şekilde Türkçe konuşabilirim. Türkçe konuşmakta hiçbir problemim yok. Türk okuluna gittim. Türk arkadaşlarım var. Rahat bir şekilde Türkçe konuşabilirim. Ne diyeceğimi de bilmiyorum, biliyor musun? Böyle hiç Türkçe'de video çekmedim. Belki ileride çekebilirim. Birazdan yemek yiyeceğim. Basically, if you're saying that input is the only way to speak a language, my question is, why am I not able to speak French? Why am I not able to speak Armenian, even though I was exposed to Armenian and Greek? Why am I not able to speak those languages? That is my question to you. So far, I talked about how comprehensible inputs failed me to learn a language or speak a language, basically. And now we're gonna talk about the solution. What's the solution? You learn English, let's say, by watching TV shows. You did the input, right? You did the input, let's say, okay? But input doesn't make you speak a language. So what are we gonna do? We need to take an action. We need to speak a language. When you start practicing with the scripts of TV shows or use videos, but as a beginner, you need to start learning English with the scripts of TV shows. This is where you will start to speak the language. For instance,
you know, it's so funny I should run into you. We're having a party next Friday if you feel like swinging by.
You know, it's so funny I should run into you. We're having a party next Friday if you feel like swinging by. You know, it's so funny I should run into you. You know, it's so funny I should run into you. We're having a party next Friday if you feel like swinging by. If you feel like swinging by. Okay, what I did was here, it was not shadowing. Some people say that this is shadowing. No, this is not shadowing. What is shadowing? Shadowing is a method where you repeat the lines after you hear the lines. But I don't hear anything here. My computer is off. So basically, my brain automatically starts thinking about the scene. Right now, Robin and Ted comes to my mind. They're in the store. Robin is reporting from the store, and they run into each other. Right now the scene just comes to my mind. So basically, in this moment, my brain automatically starts to work, just like that. And I start to remember the scene, I start to remember the context. There is this book called Peak Performance, I highly recommend it. We only improve our skills by challenging ourselves, by struggling. In order to improve your skill, you need to force yourself, you need to struggle, you need to challenge yourself. What I do here is, it's so funny, I should run into you. We're having a party next Friday. If you feel like swinging by, it's so funny. I should run into you. We're having party next Friday. If you feel like swinging by, this is not memorization. I don't memorize the line. My goal is to always repeat the lines without making a mistake and move on to the next line. I don't memorize anything because you will not be able to learn anything in life by doing memorization.
Oh, I'm going back home next weekend. It's too bad it's not tonight.
Oh, I'm going home next weekend. It's too bad it's not tonight. The second most important aspect of learning language. When you practice with the scripts, you start to understand how to interact in those situations. For instance, Ted is having a party. Ted is inviting Robin to a party. But Robin is not going to be able to go to the party. So Robin is not going to the party. Robin is going home. And Robin says, "Oh, I'm going home next weekend. But it's too bad it's not tonight." You see how characters interact with each other. And by repeating their lines, automatically you start to internalize how they interact in those situations when you come across a very similar situation. If someone tells me like, we're having a party next Friday, would you like to come? Oh, I can't, I'm going home, I need to go home. I'm sorry, I'm not going to make it. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm going to miss the party. Oh, I'm sorry, I got stuck at work.
No, I got stuck at work.
The other thing is, while you're practicing with the scripts, there is an emotional process involved. What does that mean? You feel the scene. You feel the character here. You force yourself to remember the scene. While you're forcing yourself to remember the scene, you feel the emotion here. Ted is hitting on Robin. Ted loves Robin. Robin is very beautiful. And Ted invites Robin to a party. And Robin says, "Oh, it's so bad. I'm going back home next weekend."
I'm going back home next weekend. It's too bad it's not tonight.
It is. It's tonight. This Friday. Did I say next Friday? Yeah, sorry. I guess I've been saying...
It is tonight. It's tonight. This Friday? Did I say next Friday? Yeah, it's tonight. The party is tonight. Did I say next Friday? Yeah, it is tonight. This Friday. You see that, guys? So right now my brain is up and running just like that. I constantly force myself to think about the scene and understand how the characters interact with each other. I start to directly comprehend the situation. Basically, kids hear it, yes, kids do the input, but after hearing what people speak, they imitate and they kind of repeat what they say, right? And then kids try to say a few words without having any fear. Say some meaningless words, some meaningless sentences. Over time, as time goes on, they start to form their own sentences, and those sentences start to make sense over time. So this is how we speak English. This is how we speak a language. In this situation, yes, I did the input, right? I repeated the line. So basically, I got the information, and after doing the input, I did directly output. I spoke, and while I'm speaking, I actually start to understand the language here and comprehend the situation, comprehend the story. As someone who speaks nearly 4 languages, completely disagree. You simply can't speak a language well without improving your listening skills. The more you listen and practice shadowing, the more confidently and fluently you'll speak. He does not know that he owes his level of fluency to his comprehensible inputs. Talking is the result of language learning, not the cause. And here's a fun fact. English is the language that I did the least input out of those languages that I mentioned in this video. What I mean by that is, at the age of 23, I started learning English from scratch as a beginner. And up until 23, I had never watched a TV show or movie in English. My first TV show that I watched in English was Game of Thrones. I watched Game of Thrones with Turkish subtitles. And then the second TV show that I watched was How I Met Your Mother. I watched How I Met Your Mother with Turkish subtitles. And finally, the third TV show was Friends. I watched Friends with Turkish subtitles. When I started watching Friends, I came up with my script method, and I directly started speaking English by practicing with the scripts. Up until I watched Friends, I wasn't understanding what I was hearing in TV shows or movies. For instance, I wasn't understanding what I was hearing in Game of Thrones. I wasn't able to understand How I Met Your Mother, even with English subtitles. Okay, basically at the time, when I first started learning English as a beginner with the scripts, I wasn't able to understand anything, even with English subtitles. I was watching the shows with Turkish subtitles. So basically, on the contrary of what you say, many of you say like input comes first. Understanding and listening is crucial. I started speaking English before I started understanding movies or TV shows or whatever I was listening. For me, speaking came first, and understanding, listening came second. After I started speaking English, actually, at the same time, I started understanding what I was watching or what I was listening, what I was hearing. And why is that? Because the nature of speaking requires you to understand the language. For instance, when I practice with the scripts of TV shows, when I repeat those lines, I actually try to understand what I'm saying. Because when you say something in English, when you make sentences, in a very natural way, inherently, you want to understand what you say, right? You don't want to repeat those lines like a parrot. That's a very natural feeling that you get when you speak. At the age of 23, I did my first input with Game of Thrones. Can you believe that in terms of listening? And also, for instance, many of you do a lot of input by watching YouTube videos. I watched my first YouTube video in English at the age of 25 when I decided to start a YouTube channel. And my first YouTuber that I watched in English was Peter McKinnon, which I talk about this. 6 years ago, I watched my first YouTube video in English. I didn't learn English by watching tons of movies or TV shows or anything. A few TV shows was enough for me to learn the language. Basically, on the contrary of this input theory, first you need to do a lot of input. You need to do thousands of hours of input. You need to understand the language. That did not happen to me. Also, the other problem with comprehensible input, you say that you need to expose yourself to the language thousands of hours. This is how kids learn the language. We need to practice language. We need to speak language as an adult because we don't have 20 years ahead of us to speak the language fluently, to become fluent in language. Our goal is to speak the language within a year or within 2 years, maximum 3 years. We can't wait for 10 years or 15 years to learn the language. So this is why we actually force ourselves to speak the language and practice English all the time, or whatever language that you want to learn. Keep this in mind. In my personal learning language journey, input didn't make me speak the language. Learning 3,000 or 2,000 Armenian words didn't make me speak Armenian, even though I come from a family who speaks many languages. Even though I was exposed to many languages, I'm not a polyglot. So basically, your intention, your goal, what makes you fluent in your target language.